This is the Promising Practices for Health Equity podcast, brought to you by the Interdisciplinary Research Leaders Program, a national leadership program of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Hello, and welcome back to Promising Practices for Health Equity, the podcast created by the Interdisciplinary Research Leaders Program, affectionately known as IRL. I'm your host, Krystal Lee, and my co-host is J. Robin Moon, Associate Director of Research, Evaluation, and Dissemination for IRL. Hey, Robin.
Hi, Krystal. Good to be here.
Good to have you. This season of Promising Practices, as you know, we are exploring the experiences, the stories, and the lessons of our IRL fellows and alumni. And today, we are so pleased to have representatives of Cohort 7 with us from Team ATL Grove Park. We would love to welcome Erin Bradley, Maureen Sanchez, Linda Animashaun, and KaToya Sumner. Welcome, friends.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, for having us.
We're so glad to have you with us today. Before we ask you to tell us about yourselves and your work, we invite you to engage with us in one of our signature IRL promising practices, checking in with each other. One of our core beliefs is that nurturing personal relationships is key to building communities that collaborate effectively in the work towards health equity. So at the beginning of our meetings at IRL, we do a quick check-in with everybody to help us continuously build connections and prioritize our beloved community. So the check-in question for today, if you could share one insight with your younger self, what would it be? Just one. I will start so much. I would tell my younger self to try not to take yourself so seriously. I'm going to toss it to Krystal.
I thought you were going to say what I was going to say, which is I would encourage my younger self to try more things and to not be so afraid of trying new things. I will toss it to Maureen.
That's so funny. Mine's like the opposite. I'm like, try less things. But I like, all jesting aside, I think that more so the concept, I think I was scared, and this may come up. I personally, like, my faith is important to me, and this may come up throughout our podcast, but I think that I didn't trust that God would show up in certain areas, and I then tried to fill in the gap. And I think I would just tell my younger self to take a step, to just wait and like have more faith, basically. I'll toss to Erin.
Let's see. Y'all had good ones. As cliche as it sounds, like, enjoy the journey. It's very easy to be working towards something and then so focused on that destination that you really aren't like enjoying all of the things along the way. And then you get to that thing and then there's the next thing. And if you're always looking forward to the next thing, you won't be able to like enjoy all the little things in the middle, all the very confusing and sometimes difficult things in the middle that help you better appreciate the end of the journey. I'll toss it to KaToya.
Gosh, I don't know why things like this, I'm like anxious. I'm like, what would I say? Well, that was good. Well, that was good. I talk to younger KaToya a lot, so we know what's going on. But I think I would just say there's so much power in connection, and never take any small conversation as minor, because you never know the value that that conversation can have or the relationship that you build with that person. So just a power in like the opportunity of like meeting new people and not knowing where that could lend itself in your life. And then Linda.
Thank you. I would say what I would tell my younger self and my current self, to, if I'm very, is that it's okay to fail. It is okay, and it is expected, and you will not die. And so I guess it's a spin on try more things and be okay with risk, because you will fail and you will survive. It will be fine. And you will learn new things as a result. It's a learning experience rather than a quote unquote actual failure. So that's what I would tell my younger and current self. I'm getting older by the second, so I'm still telling my younger self.
Perfect. Thank you all for sharing. Maureen, let's start here. Let's start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then you can popcorn it to another one of your team members, and we'll go from there and get to know you all.
Okay. My name's Maureen. I'm originally from New Jersey and then came to Atlanta in 2010 to do a year-long program that places youth in inner city neighborhoods. And like I said, faith is important to me. So it's a faith-based program, but it actually is kind of like anti-missional work because it's like, oh, you probably have a savior complex. Turns out God's already here. No one really needs you. And then you go through a curriculum about like racial reconciliation and learning about systems of oppression and things like that. And so I did that, and then I stayed in my neighborhood and kind of continued to live out the values that were from the program with different alumni. And so I then kind of, was exposed to a lot and was kind of wrestling with like, where do I interject and like, where's my passion of trying to stop the different systems? And so I became a substance abuse counselor, but I realized I'm not extroverted enough to be doing that. And so I like the concepts of like what's the goal, and then how do you break down the steps to get there. And so I went back to grad school for community development. And so I got my master's at Emory with a focus in program planning and organizational management. And so I started working at Grove Park Renewal in 2021, and we do affordable housing. And I was hired on to build out our programs with a community focus, and really more so of how do we bring residents together to support one another. And most of the now that we're talking about this, most of the pattern is like, I'm not needed. How do I get spaces where I'm not needed? And then last month I became the executive director. So yay. So I'll pass it to KaToya.
A little bit about myself. Well, I'm a fitness professional, but I have a background in education. I'm a former teacher. I've also have a background in property management in all realms of the way. But ultimately, I am a believer in creating positive spaces for people to feel seen, heard, and loved. And so every space that I've been in, whether it's a classroom, whether it's property management, which can sometimes be a hard place to show compassion at times, but fortunately I've been a part of companies and organizations that put that first, even in property management, and creating and cultivating a space for that in fitness. And so I think that's the governing drive amongst what I enjoy doing. And as long as I can do that in some type of way, then it's a win. So that's kind of a simple background for myself. Erin.
All right. Let's see. I am college professor and a public health researcher. My primary aim is to help people and populations identify barriers and remove them, and stop people from being as healthy as they would like to be. So that is me in a nutshell work-wise. I'm also a loving auntie to a 16-year-old, which I can't believe. Hey, Abigail. And then my 5-year-old niece, Zara, and my 2-year-old nephew, Kenzo, who I FaceTime almost daily, help to balance out all of the difficult work. I also love to shop, and I love to watch movies. So I play as hard as I work just to kind of keep things in balance. But that's pretty much me. Linda, last but not least.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Animashaun. I am a health equity focused evaluator. And I'm not affiliated with any university. I actually, during the course of IRL, I I went on self-employment. I started my own business, well, back in 2021, but I went full-time in 2020, at the end of 2024. And the work that I do focuses on, as I've mentioned, health equity, making sure that organizations are aware of how their public health programs are working in order, and how effective they are, in order for them to increase visibility on their programs in terms of having more people participate, but also helping them with regards to increasing funding for the work that's working. In my personal life, I'm also a believer, as Maureen mentioned. In fact, Maureen, Erin, and I, well, I guess we didn't meet at church, but at one point we all attended the thing together. I'm from New Jersey, like Maureen. My family is from Ghana, and I've been in Atlanta since 2007. I came to Atlanta for my Master of Public Health degree, which is where I met Erin. She was my TA. I love to say that, but that was up until IRL. That was the extent of our professional interaction together. So both Maureen and Erin and now KaToya have become friends. And so that's me. I'm also an auntie of two little babies, one CJ, who is 3, and Zariah, who will be 1 in December, almost the same age as Maureen's youngest as well.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you for everybody to sharing a piece of who you are for our audience. Let's talk about your IRL project, Team ATL Grove Park. The title of your project, your team's project, was Creating Margin for the Marginalized, evaluating a multi-level strategy to address effects of systemic racism in housing and health. It's a mouthful, and there's so many questions already. Erin, would you like to tell the audience about the project, where your community, is, and also at least one promising practice that has emerged from your project? And the team, feel free to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we chose the longest title possible. It's always hard. We kind of default to creating margin for the marginalized and then just fill in the blanks later because, it was fine in print, but it's a mouthful for sure. So what we did actually was a program evaluation for Grove Park Renewal. And I'll let Maureen talk a little bit more about Grove Park Renewal. But our goal was to identify a model. So we saw a model that we thought was unique in some ways, pairing affordable rent with wraparound services, basically having a comprehensive way of providing the other support that could create margin for people who are socially and economically marginalized. So a lot of programs will just have Section 8 vouchers, for example, or some way to provide affordable rent, but that doesn't meet all the rest of the needs that people have, often by no fault of their own, just the systems and structures that exist that stop people from being able to transition out of programs or out of a state of needing assistance, and just believing that coupling those support resources with affordable rent would give people some space to breathe, give them some margin so that they can stabilize and then move to housing independence, and social and economic mobility, all of that. So yeah, Grove Park Renewal, I had started a couple years ago doing, and I forgot to mention, Agnes Scott College is where I am located. Through Agnes Scott, I got a little bit of research funding to explore the health effects of unaffordable housing. Most of the housing conversation has been about money. It's been specifically economic. Well, if you can't afford to live here, just move somewhere else where you can afford to live. And that has become increasingly difficult. But apart from that, when you change your address, you change your life. And so when we're displacing people, we're not accounting for the physical, mental, social effects of doing that. We're disrupting networks. People have been rooted somewhere for a while and have to pick up and go start life over. So yeah, I was doing the formative research for that. I did some interviews with people in a couple of the areas on the West Side. And so I was connected to Grove Park Renewal just kind of as a result of that. And so I met Maureen in 2021 to kind of assist for some of the community engagement portion. There's a program that she'll talk about, but that was, I'm a behavioral scientist by training and focus on intervention research. So as the program was coming together, I tried to just provide a little bit of insight about like people and how people behave and receive information and all of those things. And so that's kind of how we connected. So Maureen, do you want to talk a little bit about Grove Park renewal and cultivate and just that overlap?
Yeah. So Grove Park renewal started about 10 years ago. On the west side of Atlanta specifically, after the housing crisis, there were hundreds of homes that went up for foreclosure. And so what ended up happening was that investors from all around the world just started purchasing up blocks of houses, and then they were all like waiting for the flip. And so you just had people hoarding these houses, and it was just decomposing community and then bringing in other elements that the neighbors obviously did not want, that comes with the things that happen in abandoned houses. And so philanthropists ended up donating money to start Grove Park Renewal, where we were able to purchase a couple dozen homes and plots of land to preserve the houses, and then to kind of with the goal of preserving community as well. And so because the neighborhood was 86% renters, and because of the area income, we decided to have those be rental houses. Because what was happening too was over the years, the neighborhood did start then to gentrify. And so people then who were living in their houses renting, then those houses were being sold off and they had nowhere to go. And so we really kind of tried to create this model to prevent displacement. And something that's really big in Atlanta is AMI and in affordable housing in general. So it's the area median income. And in Atlanta, they're taking the Atlanta area, but then also some of the suburban areas and adding those into the median income number, which then kind of skews the numbers significantly higher. And so kind of an example is that based on the charts, and it goes by the HUD AMI charts, the family of two the average in Atlanta is that family of 2 or 3 is making about $100,000 for their household income. And so that doesn't matter too if it's a husband or wife or 2 adult incomes. That could be or a person and their child. So then in our neighborhood, the average income is around $30,000, and it has gone up. So it is maybe about $40,000 now, but that is still about 30 or 40% AMI. And so with affordable housing, you typically don't have anyone building housing less than 60% AMI. And so because of that, is creating more displacement. So Grove Park Renewal is dedicated to providing affordable housing at 60% or below primarily. That is really creating spaces where people aren't displaced. So that's kind of the context of Grove Park Renewal. And so then the original idea was that people would have affordable housing, and then just naturally with like Maslow's hierarchy idea, they would have the secure space, and then they'd be able to kind of just climb up the ladder to self-actualization. And so like Erin was referencing, the reality is that the systems themselves are so broken that it is a full-time job navigating these cycles that are just designed against people. And so I was hired on to kind of help create structures to help our residents navigate that. And most of that, which we love so much about IRL and the values of that, because I feel like it aligns so well, is that residents is an assets-based approach essentially, and realizing that residents know the information. They don't need us. It more so is connecting them to one another so that they could help one another out and connecting them to the resources that's already in the community. And so the kind of bread and butter of Grove Park Renewal is Cultivate, where we have taken our residents in small cohorts. So it's around 10 to 15 people every week and bringing them together to just have a cross-pollination of resources and then also learning some curriculum that kind of then helps them reach whatever goals they are. So for example, in October, we are doing a specific module about home ownership preparation. And so this more so is if home ownership is is your goal within the next like 3 years, like how do you get your finances lined up? How do you get your credit lined up? And the actual practical steps. And then at the end of every class, we kind of, have time where residents can just share out natural resources and things like that. So that's kind of the gist.
Thank you. So that's the name, creating margin for the marginalized, because you're operating on the folly of the average bell curve. Promising practice, Linda or KaToya? What promising practice has merged?
I would say that the promising practice is the fact that we are using community-led data collection. And oftentimes, at least in academia, and so we have researchers who are trained and then do the data collection, particularly qualitative data collection, focus groups, interviews. And in this case, we have used members of the community. KaToya was one of them and was the main one, actually. And that just has made a world of difference in terms of not only does she have the skill set to do the data collection, having interviews, and KaToya just has a wonderful personality on top of having the skill set of having been a teacher and a facilitator and being a welcome space for people, as she's just said. But now she has the context, she knows the residents. So there are areas where someone like me, I might need to probe because I don't understand a particular what was being said. Whereas KaToya can just have a flowing conversation and get a lot of good information. And that's exactly what she did. And Erin, I don't know if you'd want to add to that. And KaToya, please share your experience as well.
Yeah, I would just add that she was requested by name by our
Yes.
advisory group of residents. So just having somebody who was trusted, had already had a good rapport with the rest of the community members was paramount. So we didn't just close our eyes and pick a community member to be a part of it. Well suited for lots of reasons, but named as someone when we asked, like, who do you trust in the neighborhood? She was named by multiple people inside that group and out. So that was the primary reason for choosing her to lead that effort. But yeah, KaToya, you want to talk about your experience?
Sure. It warms my heart and really puts a smile on my face to know, like I stated a little bit in the intro, my role in this community first started by being I don't know, maybe I started as a leasing consultant, then I moved into property management. I had like 3 different titles, but all within this organization. And so the fact that I could tell you that you need to pay rent and I can tell you the expectations, but you still felt trusted with me once I was no longer an employee there, but still living in the community. I think that speaks volumes. It speaks volumes for the role that I played in the organization, as well as what you all are saying to my character and to my testament to the residents. So it was very great to be the facilitator. I do believe that I'm a firm believer in transferable skills. And so my background helped support the role that was needed. And I think it went very well. And it was nice to see those faces, have an open conversation about the needs and the changes and, you know, the progress of the organization as a whole, and to just kind of informally be able to get so much from them just based first on having a relationship. It was an honor, and I'm glad to be the one that could do that for this project as well as be a voice of the community.
Just from a method standpoint,
Mhm.
just that it's so much more efficient and it's also more effective to adopt this community-led version of data collection. When you think about what a regular focus group is, a traditional approach to focus groups, we have a stranger lead a conversation among people. Before that, they try to generate a relationship out of thin air so that people will open up. Before we have this recorded conversation, we slide what looks like a contract, the consent form, and then we tell everybody, relax and be as honest as you possibly can and expect this high quality data, right? And that just feels like such an unreasonable expectation to me versus having a conversation. We didn't call it a focus group. We referred to it as a group discussion. This discussion is led by a fellow resident they already know. We had food, so it was like chatting over dinner with each other. Of course, they did provide consent, but it was oral consent. We had an infographic version of a consent form. Now, they could have the contract looking one if they wanted, but they got a plain language and visual summary of what those paragraphs of text meant, right? So we wanted everybody to feel informed, but also not to make it strangely formal with signing a contract before a recorded conversation with a stranger, right? So all of that, just those adjustments were very helpful, and we really did see the differences. So Linda did a wonderful job leading the group discussions with our resident advisory group, but the tone was just different. The need to clarify certain things when you are not in that context, it's just different. I'll use one example from one of the focus groups. There was a point at which I think somebody referenced a park or something like that. And it was out of the scope of the conversation, but it was important to that person at that moment. And so KaToya immediately clocked it. She knew what the park was, or whatever the location that was being described. There had been some trouble there. And she immediately said, like, oh, yes, I know that, I've heard of that, and then referred to, like, but that's the city's responsibility, not Grove Park Renewal. That could have taken 10 or 15 minutes with, well, what I think I'm hearing you say is, where is this park located, right? All the things that an outsider would have to do in order to get the context. So what we're talking about when we have a community member lead instead of that qualitative data collection in particular, but having a community member, there's just that contextual expertise that we don't have. So what we're saying is when it's easier for us when we're thinking about technical expertise and then contextual expertise. It's easier for me as a researcher to teach you what to do than it is for you to teach me to be you, right? So facilitating a conversation, okay, sure, we can do that. Those are just like, I mean, it's not light work. Like it's a skill that you have to develop, but that's training like we would do with any entry level. Anyone can learn how to do that. Researchers, other professionals did not come out of the womb conducting focus groups, right? Everybody learned at some point. But you did, when you came out of the womb, start accumulating your lived experiences. So to ask you to download all of that in me so that I can probe properly and have a nuanced understanding is ridiculous compared to me teaching you some skills to facilitate a conversation, to get the kinds of information, to generate the kind of information that we want. So more efficient, that's going to be more efficient in the training, and it's also going to be more rigorous when we talk about precision or accuracy of results versus this obsession sometimes for people with traditional notions of methodological rigor that end up just being inflexible or unyielding. And so the irony is that your methodological rigor can interfere with the rigor, the precision or accuracy of your results, which that's the point. That's why we're doing any of this to begin with. We want high quality data. So being able to take a step back and not hoard power or not be or control whatever it is, and it's different things for different people, but being able to just recognize at any point in the process, and I mean all throughout the research process, what's more important here, contextual expertise or technical expertise, and then having whoever's the most appropriate party take the lead. I would never ask a community member like, hey, come do this structural equation modeling. We need you to do hierarchical linear modeling. Like, no, we wouldn't do, that's ridiculous, right? So it's not an overcorrection, but like recognizing when as the professional, it is best for everybody for you to take a step back because you're just not the best suited for this particular thing. So we think this approach has promise in particular because it's just more efficient and ultimately going to be more effective. And it's not radical in the implementation. It really does, for some people, require more of a radical shift in thinking, in perspective, in opening up the pool of people who are qualified to do this thing. So it's really just a mind thing. If you can get over that, get over yourself, potentially, doesn't make you less important if a community member leads your data collection. Your values shouldn't be rooted in your work. You just are inherently valuable. So there's no threat, for someone else stepping up in that way. But if you can lean into that collaboration instead of like the strange power dynamic that exists in lots of like researcher or evaluator or professional and community member, like to just let the most qualified person do the job. And in many instances, it is the community member. I'll say this one last thing, because we recently KaToya and I presented at a conference in Pittsburgh. And one of the questions kind of confused me a little bit. And then it dawned on me afterward. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So, I get up and I say these things. And then we introduce KaToya. KaToya speaks. And some people were confused about why she was the better person to do this, to lead the focus groups. Like, and no one said the quiet part out loud, but it was like, aren't you both Black women? Like, what is this? Why are you wildly unqualified to do this while she is? And therein lies the problem, right? In Absolutely. Intervention research, we talk about surface structure and deep structure, right? So surface structure are all of those like superficial kinds of things. So I could take a pamphlet designed for one group and just change the images and maybe the name, right? The names of the people mentioned. That's surface structure. That's very superficial things. If I don't change like the points of reference in there, I don't change things that really speak to the culture, right? Norms, language, again, points of reference, things like that, then the people are going to recognize it as like, this still doesn't work. Like, this is not for me. This is not designed for me. So in the same way, yes, like demographically I match, right? But I don't live there. They know who the neighbors are because they all live together. So even being very similar demographically, I or Linda still would not have been the best fit because we don't have the context. And so I think it's important for people to like recognize like that deep structure, that deep dive, and stop just thinking in demographic terms like, oh, you'll be fine, insert me here because I superficially fit in with everybody else. So I'll stop there.
I know she does want to stop. I love to hear Erin get on her soapbox about this. It bleeds with passion. And I just want to say that as, I hadn't met Linda yet, but I knew Erin, and to just feel fully supported and to feel so affirmed that like I was the one. I mean, I don't know a time I felt more chosen. And so but I took it, humbly and gracefully. And I mean, I started to kind of like try to believe it myself. But I will say from the beginning, I was like, sure, but then as I sat there and connect with everyone, it made sense to me too. And so it was just nice to be someone knowing, yeah, sure, I have contacts and I have the relationship, but to truly feel the most to feel that that was most valuable for the results needed, and to feel supported by Erin and Linda throughout the process, and to give the guidelines, the structure, all of the things that help make it, work. It made the biggest difference. So I just want to commend them for pursuing this direction to get the results in the most authentic way.
Beautifully said. I think our audience by now felt and got hit by your spiritual passion on the floor, as I am. 2 points to really summarize. One is, yeah, so like the merit-based, and by merit, I mean academically, merit-based, like if a focus group goes well, we say, oh, we have a very skilled facilitator that we brought in from outside. So it's attributed to that, learned whatever skills. And also like consent you mentioned, which is interesting because often the consent is not there to protect the folks in the room, but it's really the organization, the person who brought this in, right? So the idea of assuming to begin with that community has the expertise, they are the expert as opposed to we have something to teach, is like it sounds so natural and commonsensical, but that is not what we see. Point, I'm just summarizing and saying in different words from what you've already said. Number two, I do agree with you, KaToya. Like, I will say, Erin and Linda and Maureen have come in and just like ripped it apart at IRL, and I remember that day very clearly when Erin said, why do we say community based is not important? It has to be community led. What you just heard from what Erin just said. And that took Erin's an academic researcher, Erin, Linda, we took those particular type of academic researchers to acknowledge somebody like KaToya, somebody like, people in your community. So I think it's actually both. You are a dream team, and we just hope that IRL inspires more of academic scholars like Erin and Linda to do this kind of work. Thank you.
Yeah, KaToya, did you have something else to add?
Just a little bit. I mean, I
Go
hate
for
to
it.
be that person because that was so beautifully kind of closing. I just want to kind of tie that into Maureen saying places where people don't really need me. And I think that this concept is it. Like, community is there. And I think that if people want to find the gems that can do this type of facilitating and be a voice and find value in the community, that it's worth it to not come in and have the complex to save or do, or but to go within and empower the community, even from choosing me to facilitate, but then also having the resident advisory team. You're giving the voice and the power back to the community to be the change makers while you utilize your experience, network, and everything else to make the change. And so, again, I'm just echoing it all back, but as a community person, it shows the value right back to the community, and you get to empower and embolden people who already are there to feel most welcomed and a part of the mission.
And you started it, KaToya, so now I'm gonna be that person too. Last thing. So I feel like the goal for anybody, like any scientist, anybody who is producing knowledge, anybody who's interested truly in like answering the questions, our goal really should be capacity building, right? There are so many things to discover all over the place, right? And so if we can help people learn how to do things like collect their own data, ultimately analyze their own data, if they can answer their own questions, we can move on to the next community who doesn't have those skills. So like just approaching it as like building capacity along the way, it's not like you're not going to have a job anymore. If you allow people to maximize or optimize their skills, then suddenly there won't be enough research to go around for all of us, right? That kind of like zero-sum mentality just drags out the process for us getting to these places of discovery and being able to improve health, which if that's our goal, then we want to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And ultimately, I would love to see like a community trained up fully in research. We actually had, or evaluation, we had a position that we weren't able to fill, but we were going to have an apprenticeship, right, for somebody from start to finish to learn what we were doing so that they could do it after we're gone, right? So that kind of like train the trainer model, or each one teach one, all of that will exponentially increase our reach. So I think thinking long term and not just like, we don't have time in our lifetime as researchers, or in our lifetimes as researchers, to be able to get to all of the things, but we could if we would help move the process along by getting out of the way, get out of people's way, help equip them, come alongside them. I can always come and write a grant if you don't have time to do that. Like, I will try to help you pursue this money together, but then I can leave and you can go on and you can actually do the work and be trusted to do so. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. I mean, snaps to you for everything that you all have identified as the promising practices that have come out of the project that you're working on. I can tell, as KaToya mentioned, like, Erin, I can see and I can hear your passion for the work. And, you know, we've talked about like how you all came to the work and how it's obviously so important to you. And one of the things that I know from my personal experience, and we've heard in many of these conversations, is that, you know, the work that you are doing every day and the passion that you bring to that work in trying to create equitable environments, equitable systems, and working against systems of oppression can be hard work, right? It's especially when you take your work personally, like some of us do. And so I wonder if you can share for our listeners, you know, what are the ways that you engage in self-care as you do this difficult work? Maybe let's start with Maureen, and then you can popcorn it to everybody. Like, what do you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I think something that I'm trying to do better this year is to have fun. I think as adults, we just lose the ability to play, and I don't want to outsource that to like social media, you know? So yeah, I think that's the short answer. It's just trying to find ways to have fun and to play more. So I'll bop it over to Linda.
Yeah, I have been thinking about this. One thing that I will say that is helpful for me, that I need to do more, I should do more of it, is just go out for a walk, nature walks without my cell phone. It allows me to process my thoughts, because I have a lot of stuff up here, but it's always half thoughts. And so it gives me the opportunity to process my thoughts fully. And I just feel, you know, I have come to an age where physical activity is also a emotional stability and all of that, not just for the looks, but it also helps with your mental well-being. And so I know for me, walking, especially when it's around greenery, is good for me. I will go to KaToya.
I have no problem with self-care. It's almost like a, hey, everybody else is still here. No. But yeah, as a fitness enthusiast and a fitness instructor, movement is number one. And then finding fun through movement. So it's a blend of both of theirs for sure. The workout that I actually teach is called Pound, and it's a weighted drumstick rhythmic cardio jam session. I know, mouthful, but it's a ton of fun and it makes me happy. And, you know, just carving out time to move, to have fun, to put something on your calendar and look forward to. I think those are important for me. Those are the natural ones. The ones that I do have to work a little bit more are for those more internal chill practices, to sit, to meditate, to just a little bit more of that internal dive. And so that's what I have to practice, because I find the value in that a lot, because I can move, but being still is what I think gives a lot back to me, because it is an actual practice that I have to do. Erin.
I would say for me, I am the opposite. I can chill with the best of them. I could teach a master class on relaxing and luxuriating. I have a massage schedule for this afternoon. So I love a good nap. So I really do. I'm highly introverted. And so like all of this is incredibly draining. So I'll say even just framing first, I think what was most helpful, and this was toward the beginning of our project, and then it ended up being like followed up with the 4 Pivots book that we ended up reading. Fighting against something is more draining than working towards something. And so our work didn't change, but the framing of our work as like, we want to clear a path for people to home ownership and housing stability was like a more hopeful, we are working towards something than like dismantling, fighting structural racism that has been here for generations. Like that, it's there, it's a real thing. It's well documented in housing. But to have that be like, are we going to individually, like as a small project, going to be able to do that? What we can do is work towards something. And so like hope and inspiration and also being able to mobilize and like get people to come along with you towards something positive is easier to like that than to recruit people to fight against something, which people just typically don't want to do in a general sense. So I think that made the work lighter for me, framing it that way. Yeah, and just as a matter of balance, those things. I would also say, kind of tapping into what Maureen led with, like, I would not make it through any of this work without my faith. Being able to decompress from a terrible day, and I've already done my movies, and I've probably walked around shopping, even if I didn't buy anything, it's just relaxing for me. I've been through the playlist and whatever else, to be able to, like, just recover for the next day, like finding some scripture to ground me, being able to be like, oh, it's terrible here. Like, what's going on? Why are people treating each other like this? And to have some like just solid, like, this is not a surprise. Like, this is how it's meant, the cycles, it's gone throughout, like, but here's hope. So a psalm or something from Proverbs, just some wisdom, some whatever it is, or even like, what, like, truly, what does the Bible say about this thing? And being able to like bring my mind in alignment, but also settle my spirit if I'm deeply vexed or disturbed about some of the things I've witnessed has been helpful for me. So I'll say the combination of those things, I'm more likely to lay down than move. I got to work on that. But definitely being able to like lean on relationships and those kinds of things, FaceTiming the little ones almost daily can bring you out of anything, right? That little cartoon character laughing and, you know, all of those things can bring you back where you need to be.
Thank you so much. Erin, I think I'm gonna quote that in the podcast notes. It's much, how do you say it? I'm gonna go and listen to it again. Much easier to work towards something than fight against something. Beautifully said. Team ATL Grove Park, you are a special team. Thank you so much for being here. And we look so forward to sharing this episode with our listeners. Thank you for all your insights.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks,
so happy.
IRL. We love you, IRL.
Yes, so grateful.
Yeah.
So happy to have you on our IRL podcast. Thank you for sharing the lessons that you've learned. Thank you for sharing your promising practices. Thank you for being here with us. And thank you to our listeners. Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. What promising practices are you using in your work to achieve health equity? Find us on the Interdisciplinary Research Leaders LinkedIn page, where you can share your thoughts or leave questions for Team ATL Grove Park. And don't forget to subscribe to Promising Practices for Health Equity so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for joining us on this journey where every step we take together brings us closer to a healthier, more just world. Until next time, take care. Promising Practices for Health Equity is produced by the Interdisciplinary Research Leaders Program, a national leadership program of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. A special thanks to our guests, our production team at Studio Americana, and to you, our listeners, for being a part of this important conversation.